Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a review of He-Man from Masters of the Universe Origins by Mattel. So this is a new figure line that is on store shelves. This is exclusive to Walmart right now, and in 2021 it will be everywhere. Next year you're going to be able to get this at retailers across the country. They're only $15 a pop. They include a mini comic and of course the figure. And they are modeled after the original 1980s Masters of the Universe figures, but they have modern articulation and some visual touch-ups, and they're designed for both kids to play with and adults to collect. And so this is a really exciting line. Normally I don't review figures that everyone else has reviewed, but this is just very special to me. Growing up, the two franchises I played with were Star Wars and Masters of the Universe. So this has a very, very special meaning to me. This is the first He-Man figure I've bought in 18 years, and the first He-Man figure in this scale that I have ever bought. Like when this was originally on the shelf back in the 80s, my parents bought this for me because I was a child. So this is a really big deal to me. So you're kind of in my wheelhouse. I'm a huge Masters of the Universe fan, so I'm going to be really meticulous about this, and I'm really approaching this from the point of view of someone who loved the original franchise when I was a kid. I've had the 2000X figures. I couldn't really afford many of the more expensive Masters of the Universe classics that you had to get an $1,800 subscription for to buy those figures. They've been doing these expensive collectible figures over the last umpteen years. I wasn't able to afford those except for like the extras that got dumped on Best Buy for $20. So I'm coming at this just from a pure love of the franchise and looking at this from someone who owns this figure from when I was a kid. All right, so let's start with this packaging. So before I compare it to anything, let me just say that without even looking back at the old packaging, this is just gorgeous. It's attractive. It makes the figure pop. I love this packaging to death. And the best thing for mint-on card collectors, not only can you hang this thing, but this thing is actually standing completely on its own. It's not leaning against anything. You can just plop this down on a shelf and display it and don't have to worry about it falling over or anything. That is awesome and very evocative of the way the old figures were. And so here we're comparing it to one of the original Masters of the Universe card backs. And so this is obviously one I opened as a kid. And so as you can see, it's very, very evocative of it. To answer, the obvious question, is this basically just them reusing the same artwork and reusing the same mold? Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like this is probably a new rendition of that artwork and a new mold for the character, but it is very, very evocative of the original. It's meant for the viewer who is familiar with those old figures to look at it and be like, oh man, that looks just like it did back in the day. And you really have to take it out and compare it to, your old stuff in order to see the differences. But I gotta say, this is a really, really good call. This exploding planet, which I guess I've always interpreted as some kind of exploding celestial body behind the figure. It's just always been so powerful and so evocative of, kind of the cosmic battle that rages in Masters of the Universe, between He-Man and Skeletor. So I've always loved that packaging. Now you're going to see some extra things on the new packaging that you don't see on this old one for Skeletor over here. So this new for 20 that you see in the corner is evocative of this new that they would put in the corner of some of the newer figures that came out sometimes. Personally, I really wish they had just gone with new. I don't think new for 20 was really necessary if they're trying, especially if you're going for nostalgia. Just do it, Also, new for 20 is just weird. no one says, hey, this is 20. Everyone says it's 2020. That's, new for 20 is not the way human beings talk. Minor point, but, As far as the starburst goes, it was used some on the later figures, like this one in particular. It says modern posing retro play on the new figure. This I think is probably trying to differentiate it from the recent Super 7 figures that were made exactly like the old figures with the same articulation. So I kind of understand that they really wanted to kind of make sure that you knew this was something different than those figures. I don't know if like having retro play really big on the packaging really helps with attracting children, but again, I understand the situation that they're in. The Starburst, though, I feel like is kind of covering up a little bit too much of, honestly, some of the best packaging design ever done in the toy industry. So I kind of wish they'd gone with something a little more subtle that didn't cover up that artwork. As you can see, it was quite common for them to put, extra information about, the action feature or whatever on the figure and just put it in letters that didn't distract from the artwork. And I hope going forward that's what they do. So looking at the back of the card, they've really emulated pretty much all of the original card backs. So you've got your artwork, which was always a treat on every Masters in the Universe figure would have unique artwork for the character. I would say, again, don't cover up the artwork with a Starburst. There's other ways to let people know it includes a mini comic. This is gorgeous. This is part of the reason I'm buying this. Again, don't cover it up. It's got the action feature is normally done with these little boxes on the side. I feel like this could have been done a little better because it almost feels like a joke, like, oh, he can hold his weapon and he can pose. This figure can do a lot more than that, as I'll show you in this review. So I think that could have been better to put in these boxes than just, something that almost feels like a joke, like, oh, we can hold a weapon. And of course, it has what's called the cross sale, which is illustrations of all the different figures that are out, or I guess in this case, some of the figures that were out. And so that's well done. I don't really like the new for 20. Hopefully they'll drop that in future card backs. But other than that, it's a really attractive back of a card back. Definitely a good bonus for buying this thing. And like any retro style packaging, unfortunately that blister card is glued to that beautiful card. So you are going to have to damage the packaging to get him out. So time to activate those old school opening skills. All right, I'm going to try it from the bottom, guys. Let's see what we can do here. Well, he's opening up pretty well. I think I may be able to slip him out with minimal damage. Oh, I got the mini comic to worry about too. Gosh, I didn't even think about this stuff when I was a kid. Okay. It's gonna take a little bit more. He's a pretty big figure. Oh God. Okay, what in the world is going on with this mini comic? Oh my God, why is it glued to the board? So I am not entirely certain what was going on there. It was stuck to the card back. I don't think it was glued. I didn't remove anything that I would identify as glue, but it was stuck. And you can see, and I'm not sure if this is the packaging that's stuck to the comic or if some of the comic, I think this is maybe some of the packaging stuck to the comic, and I'm not even sure how to get that off, if that's even possible. That's not cool. That's definitely not how it worked back in the day. It should have just been in there and should have just slid out. So that's not good. So this mini comic comes with all the figures in this initial wave, so you're going to have plenty of chances to get it again if you end up accidentally damaging it like I did. Hopefully I'll have better luck next time. As you can see, it has the classic cross cell on the back, and is, it's a Masters of the Universe mini comic. I think I'll probably do a separate review of the mini comic. And so here's the figure. As part of our modern packaging, he is actually strapped in there. He's so powerful they had to strap him down in the packaging. So I am going to cut this, hopefully. They even strap down his legs or his feet, so you have to slide off some little strings, plastic strings there holding his feet in. And so after you jump through all those modern packaging hoops, here is the figure and his accessories outside of the packaging. All right, so let's take a look at the articulation. So unlike the original figures, which only had articulation, you could bend them at the elbows and you can move the legs, and that was it, and the head. So unlike those, he can be bent at the elbow. So he can extend his elbow, he can extend his arm out. His hand rotates. His hand will go back and forth. Got a hinge there. He has the classic ability to turn his torso, which is so freaking great. Now, he doesn't have an ab cut, but if I had to choose between an ab cut and the ability to turn your waist, oh my God, yes. This is so much more natural than I don't know what an ab cut really does for you, to be honest with you, but this is just so much better and more natural with posing than, an ab cut, to be able to actually turn his waist. So I'm really, really, really glad they kept that. And so while the old figures could turn their waist, that was a spring-loaded action feature and not a point of articulation. So this is the first time they've really ever been able to pose like that. So that's awesome, like I said. So his knees bend, which is also, of course, new for this figure. Now, they've done this really weird thing where they're trying to cover up the articulation, and I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and say I'm not real thrilled with that. And especially, it becomes noticeable at certain angles. I wish they'd find another way. I think if he had an exposed knee joint underneath here, I think that would be fine. So his feet will rotate as well, for whatever reason. And then his feet will bend here. So he's got a really good amount of articulation, and of course his legs will still, he can still spread his legs, and he can still he can kick a little bit, so he can do a lot of different poses and stuff that the original He-Man figure just couldn't do. Just all kinds of iconic He-Man poses that you couldn't do back in the 80s. And yes, I would be neglectful if I didn't mention that the head can go up and down as well. And, it can also obviously rotate all the way around, just like the old days. So as far as the paint job goes, it is very clean, it's very bright, and it looks great. The only thing I would disagree with is the color of the hair is just too bright. I hope, maybe there's a future release where it's not this glowing yellow. But other than that, I think they really nailed it. I mean, the original belt was orange, and so they colored the gauntlets orange, and they also made them both identical gauntlets like the Filmation, which is fine. I think that's a nice upgrade or update to the design. And the painting goes all the way back, which is a nice touch. And yeah, this is for a sword, guys. So why don't we just go ahead and get into the accessories. So yes, at long last, you can put He-Man's power sword in his harness. Now, it's a one-sided sword, so you're going to want to put it like that. if you're displaying him from the front. It is a one-sided power sword, just like in the old days, so it will combine with other versions of the power sword, presumably from Skeletor, to form a whole power sword. Just like back in the day. Back in the day, this was how, you got back into Grayskull. Now, the design is a little different. I'm going to go ahead and just do a comparison time. I don't have his original power sword, but I have one from the weapons pack. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, they changed the design of the sword. But, and this is something I've never realized after all these decades, but look at the way that this is molded. Clearly the blade is part of the sword. Clearly the handle is part of the sword. But if you look at it very closely, this part right here, it looks like they just couldn't tool it. So there was a space there, so they had to kind of put this plastic there. All these decades, I mean, Filmation interpreted that as part of the sword. That has been the design of the power sword forever, as far as the classic He-Man goes. But it looks like it was never actually meant to have this as part of the sword. It looks like this was meant to be a space just like this. So that is really, really cool. It really just changes the way I look at the power sword now, so that's awesome. And as you can see, the power sword fits very well in his hand, and you can, get different kinds of poses with it, obviously. So that's really cool, and it's nice and shiny. I think they did a very good job with the power sword. The axe also fits in his hand rather well. I don't know if he ever used this in the Filmation cartoon or not, but the original came with an axe. It was a little more detailed, but this one's fine. And lastly, there's the classic shield, and he is going to hold it and have this clip onto his arm, like so. And so now he can actually properly hold a shield for once, which is pretty cool. Get very proper action poses. So that is pretty awesome. Comparing it to the original shield, as you can see, the new one is bigger, and they've made some design changes to make it look a little more natural to a medieval style shield. Now, one of the iconic features of Masters of the Universe figures is that you can interchange their harnesses. So He-Man's harness is a little different this time. You just pop it off in the back like that. And I think you're going to have to take off the head to get it off. So his head will come off, like on purpose. Pop. And so now you can take it off. And actually you probably have to take off the torso. Now his torso will come off. And this is something that I think should have been featured as an action feature. This line has interchangeable parts. So now you could put other characters' top halves on He-Man's bottom half. And you have much customization this way. So that's pretty cool. He-Man's torso just threw his axe at you. And let's see here. While we're at it, let's see here. The arms come out as well. So let's just have a pile of He-Man body parts here. So, boom. Okay, so He-Man's arms. Maybe this is the way the figure should have come. I'm not sure about the legs. I think the boots come off. Let's see. I think. And so here's He-Man in all of his composite parts. Yes, the boots did come off. They just took a little bit more effort. They'll probably be easier the next time. But, like, how amazing is that? The amount of customization you're going to be able to do with these figures is going to be amazing. Again, this to me is an action feature. This is great. My understanding is that they are compatible with the Masters of the Universe wrestling figures that are out. I believe it's called Masters of the WWE or something like that. But you should be able to mix and match parts with those figures and, of course, future Masters in the Universe figures. And so while we're talking about customization, let me touch on this head sculpt. I'm going to jump on the bandwagon and say I am not thrilled with this one. I think it's great for them to update the head sculpt and to have him with longer hair and everything, like we see him like pretty much everywhere else outside of the figure. But this head sculpt is just a little off. I mean, feels a little stretched, a little wide or something to me. So if you're like me and you're not thrilled with this one, they're going to come out with a Battle Armor He-Man, and it will come packed in with the original He-Man head. So if you don't like this one, you're going to have a chance to get that head and pop it on this figure, or, you know, any He-Man figure they come out with. So that's pretty awesome. By the way, if you're like me and you're a little worried, like, oh my gosh, what if I can't tell his right foot from his left foot? They got you covered. They actually have them labeled inside of the boots, so you know which is right and which is left. And also a nice little feature I noticed, they actually have holes at the bottom so you can use figure stands on them. So yeah, these guys think of everything. It's awesome. And one thing I just remembered is that the hands come off too and will be interchangeable. The Battle Armor He-Man has interchangeable hands, if I remember correctly. And here is Conan, I mean He-Man, bare-chested, and he looks awesome. All right, so let's take a look at the new He-Man versus the original. And as you can see, there's some nice updates on the paint, like the painted gauntlets. And original He-Man's a little shorter, but that's because this one is standing up straight and this one's standing squat. So they did just a standout job of really updating while evoking the original, and I am super happy with this. But even though he is a slight bit bigger than the original figures, he fits right in. Here he is with my vintage Skeletor. And so if you want to get this line as replacements or to augment your original figures, go for it. He looks perfect with Skeletor here. As far as how interchangeable the accessories are, they are very interchangeable. So here we have our new He-Man holding a classic power sword from a weapons pack. He is wearing He-Man's old harness, the original He-Man harness, perfectly. It looks awesome. And we have him holding the original He-Man shield right there. All that works perfectly. The original He-Man can hold the new sword and axe absolutely perfectly. The shield, on the other hand, he can't hold it properly, but I could clip it onto the thickest part of his wrist, so it can go on there, but it's not really going to work the same way. And because of the way the new harness is designed, where you have to take off the torso of the character in order to put it on, the old He-Man will not be able to wear this. Unfortunately, that's just a design decision on this particular harness. I think the others are probably a little closer in design to how they were originally, but I'll be able to let you know when I get some of the other figures. And so the ability to use the old accessories opens up a lot of possibilities. I know some people were probably disappointed when Wondar, the Wonder Bread He-Man, did not get the fan vote to be included in the Masters of the Universe Origins line, but you can just get the black Zodak harness from the weapons pack, pop them on the new He-Man, and there you go. There's Wondar. And so no compatibility test with the old line would be complete without testing him with iconic vehicles. So here he is with Battle Cat from the old series. Here he is on the vintage Battle Ram. This front part detaches to become the Sky Sled. And as you can see, he fits perfectly. Now they have come out with a Battle Cat and a Sky Sled for the new line. So you can get Masters of the Universe Origins versions of both, and they both look incredible. So here he is with my Wind Raider, and as you can see, it's a little broken, but he can't quite sit down like the old vintage figure could because it had rubber bands on its legs, but he fits in there kinda. But if you really want to, you can just remove his legs and kind of fake it, so, you know, that's a solution. And to answer the other question I'm sure everyone's going to be asking, yeah, he does a pretty decent transformation pose, certainly more so than the original unarticulated figure could. I feel like we just need an open-mouthed He-Man so he can say, "I have the power," and all that good stuff. So overall, I'm as happy as I could be with this figure. Whether you're looking to get this as a collectible, as a mint on card collectible, as something for your kid to play with, I think it's all good. This thing feels super durable. You have to like really pull on it to get the parts to come apart, but I never felt like I was going to break it or anything. I would actually feel comfortable letting a kid play with this, even though I bought it for display. It just feels that sturdy. So I'm really impressed. I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with this line before I got this, but this has just completely sold me on the line. And I think I'm just going to collect them. I think I'm going to get all the figures, and we'll see how the rest of them are. All right. Well, that's all I got to say. Very, very excited that this is on the store shelves. I found this at my Walmart, and hopefully you can find figures at your Walmart as well. All they had was He-Man and Skeletor. I have seen Battle Cat and Battle Ram a couple weeks ago, but this is just initial little trickles that are coming out, and the bigger stock that will be hitting store shelves will be coming later, and they should fill everything out, and you should be able to get all the figures that you want. All right, like and subscribe for more videos, and until next time, good journey.